Hey everyone, in my recent video on UV mapping anything in 5 steps in Blender 5, I got a lot of questions on what add-ons do I use. So we're going to cover that today. And the best part is that these are all free add-ons. These are add-ons that I use professionally, these are add-ons that I use personally for personal projects, and these are add-ons that I use within my full game art program. Now, keep in mind these are add-ons. These will not magically give you perfect UV maps. You still have to understand the core workflow, which is what I talked about in the last video. It's 5 simple steps. Apply scale, project from view to get a clean slate, select and mark your seams, unwrap, and pack. So now that we understand that, let's look at the tools. I'll start out by selecting this part of my scope, doing Shift-D, copy, and let's jump right into the UV editor. This is ranked in order of most used within my workflow, and the first one being UVToolkit. You can get this right as an extension, and I will add that I have validated and tested these add-ons in both Blender 4.5 LTS and Blender 5.1. Now, some of these you can add directly as an extension, and some of them require downloading a zip file or going to a GitHub page. I'll be sure to link everything in the description. Now, heads up about this tool. This is updated by a developer named Raised, but the original add-on was created by Alexander. It used to be available for purchase, which it no longer is, and was removed from all stores, and then the community took where it was at and then continued to support it. But it is still completely free. But if in the future Alex wants to reinstate the storefronts, that may happen and that may take down this add-on. But in the meantime, incredibly great free resource. So with UVToolkit, I mean hands down, it is a core staple in my UV mapping workflow. For example, I'll get everything set up where all my seams are selected, that the first part of my workflow is all set, which is apply scale, project from view, and selected seams. So with projected view done, now we can actually unwrap this thing. And I can scroll down and you'll see that I have an unwrap menu and I can unwrap selected. And there it goes, it unwraps. This is pretty much the same as the right click unwrap, or if you have it set to quick favorites. Here's where the power comes from about being so efficient. Remember I talked in the last video, I said, hey, some of you are gonna ask, how do I straighten UVs in this example? Well, let's do just that. So if I select this with L, and then we have an option for straighten UVs, click, and there you go. Beautifully straightened, and it looks very clean. I mean, we get nearly square checkers all along, up and down this scope model, which is perfect. Hands down one of my favorite tools, and I'm constantly using that. Another one is that if I head over here, I can do split faces. I do have to caveat some of these tools work with and without UV sync. For example, let's select these faces and use one of my favorite ones, which is split faces, and I can detach that just like that. And what's super nice is I don't have to go in and select UV seam, re-unwrap, repack. It's all done and it's all here. I can just select my faces and say, you know what, let me split this part of the scope piece and I'll do split faces, and there it is. It just detaches. Now, if you have UV sync on, what happens is I'll select these faces and I'll try to split faces and it will not work. And you'll see at the bottom, it says need to disable UV sync. So just keep in mind, they have a button right here at the top, which works really well. Then you have basically everything that you would need to UV map. This is not an exhaustive tutorial. I will not be covering this. It is very well documented, but you can see that it has, again, everything that I need. And what I really like about this is it's very reminiscent to most UV unwrapping tools. Very similar to Maya, which is why I really like this one so much. You'll see a lot of other ones. There are a lot of add-ons, but this one works so well. If I select this one, I can straighten UVs again, select all. You can do things like orient your islands, stack your islands, unstack overlap UVs, do things like unstack. So speeds up the workflow very nice. And it even has one where you can go in and just pack right within this toolkit. Just like this, pack UVs. And you can see it does a pretty solid job. And we can see what type of margins that it's using. Now, I do use a separate UV packer, which we'll talk about shortly. But not only with UV mapping tools is that it helps to also set up a toggle UV checker. For example, I'll go in here now, and we can see we have a UV checker material already set up, right? And scrolling down, we can just create a new UV checker material. So I'll do create checker material. You see that it creates a new one here, and I can add in now, you know what, let me check how it looks like with a 512 resolution texture. Boom, done. 1024, bam. And this is what I use constantly to go back and forth, back and forth. If you want to learn game art the right way and not just follow random tutorials, I built a full game art program that walks you through the entire pipeline from an idea to a finished portfolio piece. It's split into 2 courses. Modeling and UV mapping foundations is the first one, and texturing, rendering, and presentation is the second. Each has over 40 modules, 15 hours of narrated content, exercises, time lapses, project files. And you're not doing it alone. You get access to a private Discord community where you can ask questions and get feedback along the way. If you want real-world production workflows you can use for both studio work and your personal projects, the program is live now. I'll see you there. Now let's look at one of my favorites, which is UV Packer. For example, let's select the entire scope now and look at what we have. I'll select everything, tab to enter edit mode, press A to select all, and just so we have something to compare apples to apples, let's pack islands using the default packer, which I have set to my quick favorites, which is pack islands. I will use pretty much all of these with a 0.001 margin and pack. And there it goes. And it does a pretty solid job, but what you're seeing is that it's not utilizing a lot of the UV space here on the edges. Again, probably for most cases, it is going to work fine, but when we're talking about game art and really trying to get every single pixel, really trying to boost texel density, we're going to want a better pack. So that's where we go to UV Packer. And I just absolutely love this tool. This one is not available on the extensions or add-ons, but you can get this completely for free. And if you take a look at the website, they'll kind of run you through everything and how it works. So with all of that set up, just follow the install instructions to get it set up. I will now use UV Packer and pack. And there you go. Look how much nicer and more organized. And I would say at least this algorithm works in a way where it does it by size as it goes from the 0, 0 and works its way. So it's a bit more intelligent if that's what you prefer. And I'm using specific settings here. So for example, if I want to now change the padding, right, I can say, hey, this is a 2K texture with 16 padding. Or I can say this is 4K with 32. Now, why am I coming up with these numbers? These are numbers that you need to use with the power of 2. When it comes to mapping your textures, these are all things that I talk into the game art program. But for now, we'll stick with 2048 and 16 pixels for padding. We'll use a high quality baking. We'll rescale. We'll leave pre-rotate, rotate 90 degrees. And then everything else is good. And again, you can continue to pack it. Even try to pack it a couple of times to see if it works any better for what we need. This is not a tool called UV Pack Master. That's a different tool. This is just straight up UV Packer and completely free. And I use this all the time. Now, the next tool that I like is Texel Density. Now, Texel Density, I use hand in hand with the UV Packer in order to get a common texel density within multiple objects. I just recently talked about texel density, so if texel density is confusing to you, watch my video on texel density made simple. It will get you all up to speed, and I continue to dive deeper into that into the game art program. Now, if we go in here, UV Packer, texel density, let's take a look at what we have. I can just left click select, hit L to select link, and we have texel density checker, and we have a textured size. I can say, you know what, 2K texture, let's calculate TD here. And it goes through and it says, this has a texel density, this whole object or this part has 25 pixels per centimeter. And that's fantastic. And let's say we're using our texel density checker and I wanted to compare it to other objects. I can select Suzanne the monkey here. We can do a calculate TD and we can see she has an increased density of 34, 35. And now this is where I can say, okay, I want to get them closer, right? So let's say I lower the texture size resolution, I calculate TD, and I get about 17. So I can bring that down below 20. Because as we talked, really for core hero assets, 10 to 20 pixels per centimeter is more than enough when it comes to game art assets. I can head over to the revolver here. I can select all of these assets. We can do a calculate TD, check this at 2048, and we get about 30. So now this is again where I can make adjustments to the texture size resolution at 1K. This is giving me a density of about 15 pixels per centimeter. And then I head over here and again, I can calculate that TD and that's 12, right? So very, very close between the two. They have similar texel densities and just work so well. There's more that you can do here. but you're just quickly seeing me go through, test a bunch of different objects, check the textile density, and it just works so well. So again, I use that hand in hand with UVPacker. And so I would say without a doubt, those are like the top 3, which is UVToolkit, UVPacker, and textile density. But I have 2 more that I can show you real quick that are honorable mention. And one is one that I've been using for a long time, which is UV squares. So if I go select these, I go to UV squares. And remember, if I just use the default unroute, this is what it looks like. If you're not sure how to straighten your UVs default, let's do that real quick. The first thing you need to do is create a squared face that's on this UV shell. So the easiest way to do that is to find a square, select the vertices, and we can just do a scale in X0 and Y0, meaning I scale these to be a straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. So I do X, Y, 0, and then down here I do S, Y, 0, and then we do S, X, 0, S, X, 0. And remember, our X and Y is U and V. So we just make sure that this is nice and square. Then I can select link on everything, right? So we have all of this. Then I right click, do follow active quads, and we get pretty close, and works really well for some objects, but not others. So you can do this again with the push of a button, and UV squares works really well. You can do snap with equal distance, and boom, there it goes. You can try snapping X to Y or try different methods here, but this is a tool specifically made for straightening UVs. If I select this part of the scope and then do snap XY, there we go. Another nice tool to straighten our UVs. And then finally, another tool that I've used a lot up until I started using UVToolkit, which is TexTools. TexTools is super nice because again, it has all the core generic tools that you would need for UV mapping. If you prefer this layout, give it a shot, and gives you pretty much everything that you would need to UV map. And it's also including a bunch of other tools and features, like if you wanted to do a hide a low bake, if you wanted to set up color IDs, and one of my favorites, which is this mesh UV tool. Now this doesn't work, at least as of today, in Blender 5, but if I jump over to Blender 4.5.3 and select a part like this, I go to Mesh UV Tools and I do Create UV Mesh. And that's probably one of my favorite things. Is it's really fun to kind of take this object and do a Create UV Mesh and then boom. And this is actually what I used in my animations. When I go from 3D to 2D in that animation, I just create a blend shape and it does a nice animation. So that's super useful, super fun tool to use. And there it is. Those are the core tools that I end up using for all my UV mapping needs, being UVToolkit, UVPacker, Texel Density Checker, UV Squares, and TexTools. I found that with those core free add-ons, I haven't had a need to go get a purchase add-on or use an external tool. However, this is not to say that tools specifically made for UV mapping aren't great. For years, I've used a tool called UV Layout. The hot new thing nowadays is RISM. So if it works and works for you, and probably includes way more features than what you need, but still work really well, then go for it. Absolutely use it. And if you want to learn more about the full game art pipeline, be sure to check out my course where we create a full game-ready environment from beginning to end. So with that, I'll see you in the next one.